Ben. Can you hear me? Welcome to the Postgame. Michael Brooks here with sometimes co-host Alyona Minkovski.
Hello.
Ooh, look at that.
Do you like my...
I like the very regal sound to start off the postgame.
I didn't know regal is what you were going for.
No, I was going for
I
regal.
was trying to give my sexy phone operator voice, and you're like,
like-
very regal.
Yeah.
You act like I'm not, like you're not the only one who knows how to spin shit around.
We need like a Lonely Heart style, like radio voice.
What the fuck is Lonely Hearts?
You know what Lonely Hearts radio
No.
is? It's like, no, we're going to play a song for this guy in Denver because he said
Wait,
he's
is that-
Missing his girlfriend
Wait,
tonight.
wait. Is that,
But I
what's
feel
her,
like that's,
what's
yeah,
her face? No, there's a woman.
What is her...
Oh, no, she's really famous.
Oh, my God. What is her name? I love her.
Delilah.
I love her. Delilah.
Delilah. I don't
is
think
a
Alyona
wonderful,
was not
fascinating
giving us
woman.
Delilah. It was not nearly
No.
that wholesome. Yeah.
I love
Yeah.
Delilah.
She's cute. She's very sweet.
Isn't she?
If you go into like some type of like bodega in the middle of the winter, and you're already like in a maybe affected by like seasonal affective disorder as I am, and Delilah's on, that could be a tricky proposition. It's like, damn, this is making me sad.
What
It's
do you
like-
buy in those situations? Like when you're triggered?
When I'm triggered,
Yeah.
what do I buy food wise?
Because I'm assuming you're gonna eat your emotions. That's what's gonna happen.
I'm
if
not a
you're in the
big
bodega.
emotional eater. I honestly, this is super rare. So I don't even want to I don't want to claim like valor here, but I, like the other day I had a cigarette, which is
well.
that I like. Oh, well, we smoke
Us
everything.
Russians.
This means nothing me. Shut up, Alyona. Means something me. Okay.
Well, I have unhealthy coping habits.
I'll get
if that makes you feel any
a
better.
pint of Haagen-Dazs.
Coffee flavor. 'Cause it's
Coffee
the best
or
Haagen-Dazs
pistachio.
flavor.
Pistachio is my jam now.
Oh, interesting.
If I'm really, beat down, I go into a bodega and I'm trying to eat my heart out. I'm definitely going to try to get a sandwich. But then, I don't know, like when you order sandwiches at bodega in New York, like they ask you like so many questions.
know. They're
too
And
complicated.
it can be
Takes
really
so
stressful.
long,
So I'll
too.
be, I've done this before. I've gone there, it's like, I've had a bad day. I'm going to get a sandwich. And then I order this sandwich that's absolutely insane. Like black olives and barbecue sauce and ranch. And then I feel even worse about myself because I
Yep.
can't even assert
Yep.
myself to order a proper sandwich.
That's why you should stick with the booze, the
couldn't even
cigarettes, and the
insert yourself.
sugar.
You couldn't even
No,
assert yourself.
no carbs, guys.
Carbs are
Sugar,
bad.
nicotine, and alcohol.
I think sugar and alcohol are both carbs.
You know what I mean?
No, I don't know what you mean.
As in like bread.
It's like bread. Well, that's what I do. I eat a
As in
loaf
like
of bread.
bread.
That's how I emotionally cope.
Well,
I gotta like Fuck Atkins. I need sourdough now.
Have you ever made bread before or baked bread?
Hell no. No. I mean, I would wish that I had the kind of patience to do something like that. I can make some decent meals actually, but nothing that's that elaborate. I can make I can make a good piece of salmon. Some veggies,
How do you
some
cook it?
salmon. Just on a skillet, just properly flavored on a skillet.
Like pan fried, huh? Interesting.
Yeah. Why don't you have a drink? Let me get Ben on the show. Yeah.
judging you
Keep
right
that
now.
energy going. Yeah. Yeah.
Interesting.
Believe me, judging is flying all around. Before we get to Ben Burgis, author of Give Them an Argument, Logic for the Left, and his debunk segment, we have a new song that Ed has sent us. Do we hear?
We have two versions. We'll go with
Two
the long
versions.
one for the first show here.
I want to go to mockery really badly.
I
Ben,
will.
So please go.
Okay.
You got to restrain me. This is actually pretty funny. Logical analysis. You're going to show us how to argue now. Go. That's funny, right?
This is based on data from a bunch of different countries. There's abundant evidence that that's bullshit.
I like that.
Arguments.
I like
One of your
that.
listeners made this?
Yeah. Break it down. Very talented audience. I like the kind of Linton, Kwesi Johnson kind of vibe of
It
that.
goes Animal
into
Collective
it.
at the end.
I'm into it.
Ben Burgis, welcome. How are you doing?
I'm good. That was interesting to listen to.
Hi, Ben.
Ben, meet Alyona.
Hi, how you
Alyona
doing?
Ben.
Good to meet you.
Pleasure. I guess all mine. Is that what you're saying?
Sorry, no, I'm still,
I just
So,
went
Ben,
like
just
Jeb
as a-
Bush on you. I got really awkward. I was
Just
like,
as a
I don't
warning,
know what
Ben.
to say when I meet people.
Alyona's basically drank 2/3 of a beer, so she is ready. She's not fucking around anymore. She's not. But this is to couple your like Logic Lord segments with Alyona's like existential crisis. It's going to be a very interesting mashup.
Jesus. I'm just gonna shut up.
Is your logic going to help make decisions? No, because it's more bullshit. That's stupid. That's actually kind of my perspective too, except when it comes to policy stuff, Ben. Although Ben, when are you going to accept that astrology is cool? That's my question.
no.
What sign are you?
Yeah, what
I think
sign are you,
That
Ben?
one might be a long shot.
What
but,
sign are you, Ben? Alyona just asked you a good question. What is it? What's your sign?
Aries.
Oh, so what Aries, in my understanding, is that Aries have a very single, particularly Aries men, apparently.
Wow. Like, I guess you know a lot about this.
Well, could you go? Yeah, go with.
Are you an Aries?
No, I'm not. I'm a more sort of adept sign. But so
Which is?
I'm a Leo. So
Okay.
Aries, I share a birthday with Fidel Castro, actually.
Wow.
So Aries apparently have like a single pointed focus, which can lead them to really great things, like writing a book mocking Ben Shapiro. But it can also lead to a sort of fanaticism that leads them to not see the subtleties of life, like understanding the charts and the cosmos. All right, so Ben, that being said, it's fine. You're Aries. We get it. Now, what is the debunk segment? Obviously, it's not an astrology because you would never be able to do that.
Yeah.
Yes.
No, that one would be that'd be interesting. Got to see if I can sneak that in some Tuesday night. I'll just like send it to Matt and pretend I forgot to send it to you, and be like, oh, here's the clip we're gonna do, and it'll be a clip of you talking about astrology.
Mm-hmm.
We'll do it on Literary Hangover, Ben.
Yeah, do it on Literary Hangover. Go sit around, do a little cute little podcast together where you fucking alienate half of the population. Go ahead. All right, Ben, what do we have tonight?
All right. So tonight, doing the New York Times editorial board, which has they did an editorial on June 15th. So I guess that was Saturday, called America Needs More Neighbors, which, sounds friendly,
Right.
neighborly. And the opening line, I'll just give you the first couple lines of this. Housing is one area of American life where government really is the problem. The United States is suffering from an acute shortage of affordable places to live, particularly in the urban areas where economic opportunity increasingly is concentrated. And perhaps the most important reason is that local governments are preventing construction, and it just goes on. It's just the sort of typical, YIMBY propaganda, right? Yes, in my backyard, that they nod at a certain point, like, okay, maybe we could have subsidized public housing for some people who need it, but basically what we need is to make it a lot easier to construct, market rate private housing, and of course most of those are going to be upscale units to start with, but eventually it'll lead to it'll trickle down, right? Eventually they'll as there's a profusion of private apartments being built, which are mostly upscale at first, eventually that'll lead to it being affordable, and that'll solve all these social problems that are caused by there not being enough housing. And I think that, okay, now, sometimes, we do these debunks, and it feels like, all right, what we're saying about the structure of the argument is true as far as it goes, but, sometimes the things that we're talking about are such obvious effort, like exercises and sophistry and, right-wing rhetoric that, trying to break down exactly what's wrong with the argument logically feels a little bit like correcting the grammar in Mein Kampf. But
that's a good line. I like that. Did you practice that before? And I mean that as a compliment. There's nothing wrong with practicing.
No, I'm just thinking about Mein Kampf as I do, But
That's a casual reference I like to throw around.
But it's like we all do, right?
It took Ben a long time to dissuade me from entitling my book "Mine Ideas." Mine high-level ideas. Okay, go ahead. Mine recovery mode. All right, go ahead. Mine recovery mode. Go ahead.
Nice. But in this case, it really does seem like what's wrong with the art, kind of figuring out what's wrong with the New York Times editorial board's argument here. There's actually a pretty straight line between that and seeing how we need to be pushing back against this as socialists, and where we need to be going forward, right? Because the thing the essential thing that's wrong with the case that they're making for just making it as easy as possible for developers to put up lots and lots of, the polite term is market rate, but, expensive, unaffordable housing, is that it relies on this false dilemma fallacy that, the only choices are either just not constructing more housing or just getting out of the way and, letting the invisible free hand of the free market take care of the problem. And of course, there is a third option, which would be much better, which is what's sometimes called FIMBYism, right? Public housing in my backyard. The People's Policy Project has really good stuff about this. They put out a paper about this a little while ago. But basically, this is not, last week, Bhaskar Sankara, was talking about how it's important, not to sort of pitch radical ideas as a wild leap into the unknown. But in this case, it's really not, right? This is well-tested stuff, right? That there is, in the United States, we tend to see public housing as something, because of the way it's been done in this country, we tend to see that, as associated with the sort of social problems that you get from segregating the poorest and most desperate people into public housing projects. But there are lots of examples from around the world of social democratic governments and even non-social democratic governments like Singapore, where 80% of the citizens live in some form of public housing. I've been to Singapore. I have a friend who teaches there. There's, lots of, upper and, middle income people live in these units, or like Sweden, where there are 8 million people and 1 million of them live in public housing, or the city of Vienna, where to this day 60% of the population lives in public housing. And it turns out if you actually, instead of just saying, oh, either we have to live with there not being enough housing, or we just have to get out of the way and let private developers do it and let them make as much money as possible to incentivize them, if we said, no, like the government could just build it themselves, right? Like in cities, right, could just do this, right? The People's Policy Project calls for federal aid, but, a city like New York, could absolutely afford to do this, even on its own, even without that aid tomorrow.
Right.
So,
And they could do it, start the first pieces of money to do it could be by taxing the hell out of the real estate industry that ruins this city and tortures so many people on a regular basis.
Is this going to be like before or
Absolutely.
after they fix the subway?
I think it's going to be
so good at doing
be
these
in-
things in New York City.
Well, the subway is not. I mean, the subway is not the city's fault.
This is true.
Right?
This is
like,
true,
like
but-
this is like a pretty classic example, though. Like of, and I'm not a De Blasio fan, but like, you definitely have these problems that are created by like the state starving resources and not taxing people properly to begin with, not taxing the wealthy properly to begin with, and then it just like pops up as like some organic thing, and everybody all of a sudden is like, look, they can't handle it. And it's like, well, how are they going to handle it? Right?
Yeah.
Like you didn't give them what they need to handle it.
Fair enough. Way to just shut down my snarky comment.
Hey, that was
Back.
well, I mean, Leos do that.
you know what, Ben?
They
That
do
was
think they know
fucking great.
everything.
And Leo, finally. Thank you, Ben.
Wait, when's your birthday? That
I
means
bet-
it's coming up if you're a Leo.
In August 13th. I bet your wife was relieved to hear that, Ben. What's her sign?
Let's see. Her birthday is in mid-October, so what would that make her?
Oh, she's a Scorpio.
Scorpio, yeah.
Hell yeah, dude. Well done, Ben. Scorpios
Thanks,
are good. All right, brother. The book is Give Them an Argument, Logic for the Left, and forthcoming from Zero Books, A Guide to Revolution Through the Stars. Ben Burgis uses the astro chart to chart a new politics. Ben, I'm looking forward to that book especially
Me
after
too.
Slug. Yeah.
Me too. That
Especially,
one sounds great.
Doesn't that
Yeah.
one sound good, Alyona?
Right up my alley.
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah, no, I've been doing some videos for
Dude, chicks
for Zero
love
Books
astrology,
to promote
Ben.
it. And I've gotten a lot of flack for cultural
Yeah.
appropriation, but
Yeah,
There you
stop
go.
being so otherizing and accept astrology.
Well, you know, Adorno wrote a book, The Stars Down to Earth.
Well, look, if Adorno wrote a book because he was trying to work
He
with
wrote
the
a
chart,
book.
or if
He
it
read
was some
he read the
like,
astrology column of the LA Times for an entire year, and he wrote an entire book of critical theory based on that.
About.
So,
Oh,
yeah.
interesting.
because it is sort of interesting because like the argument that he makes
You
is
think like Adorno was rolling up on girls in cafes? Like, not only do I know theory, but
I mean, think about him hanging out in LA. That
yeah.
always cracks me up a little bit.
that is
I
hilarious.
find
Some, like
astrology-
depressive European.
I feel like if you really read about astrology, though, it is kind of fascinating and it pulls you in because
I agree.
obviously, well, everyone likes to read about themselves, right? And so it's like, it's going to give you whatever you want to read. And then I also just love the manufactured industry around horoscopes that are created like by people who, I mean, they're just made up. Like some guy is just like sitting in his room being like, yeah, I had to like write these texts, so I just like Googled something. Send it, like these people signed up to pay me to send them a like their horoscope every day. I know someone.
Well, wait,
who,
that was
I
what
know someone
Adorno's
who
book
did
was
this.
about, right?
Well, that's
I know
really-
someone who did this who had nothing to do with astrology. He was just a business person, and he was like, yeah, I would just make up the text. I was writing them.
So wait, so did it match though? Because actually, David, because didn't Adorno find what it was like the middle management principle?
Yeah, so it's like the thing. One Adorno, sort of figured out that mainly people were reading the astrology column were women, and particularly women who were at home during the day.
the ladies.
So it's like interesting that he was able to highlight a lot of like the ideology that was put forward.
Yeah.
It was like, yeah, you're an important person, but you're not like the most important person in the company that you work at. If you're feeling stressed, take care of your house. Like make sure, do some
Horrible.
chores and stuff like that. It's
Jesus.
very subtle. I mean, they weren't being that explicit about it.
Yeah,
but it was
but-
basically, it's like, yeah, you might be feeling really depressed and unappreciated or whatever. But if you're feeling unappreciated, cook a nice dinner for your family.
Wow.
Jesus Christ.
That's
Well, I
what
think-
I'm saying.
That's exactly what I'm trying to say. Get in your chart, bitch. But I think but that's fascinating though, because I bet if Adorno wrote it today though, it would be much more like your startup is what the world needs.
Oh, of
like
course.
don't feel bummed that people aren't liking your Instagram posts about your like catering company that you've been forced into through multiple downsizings. Your unique purpose, I bet it would fit that like neoliberal self-actualization model.
Yeah.
But back then it was fitting just like the patriarchy of, what was it, the 40s or the 50s?
Yeah, now it's all.
I think this is like 60s, 70s.
Yeah. No, that's fascinating. Well, there you have it, Ben. I hope you'll be a little bit more open-minded.
I'm
Certainly
an
it's-
Aquarius, by the way, in case you were wondering.
You're totally Aquarius.
Just wanted to let you know.
Yeah. I should have checked that before I agreed to us co-hosting. Can Leos and Aquarius co-host? Fuck.
We could write a whole book
Yeah, right. Yeah.
about the Leo Aquarius
Leo-
dynamic.
Yeah. Co-hosting across the stars. The content is the solar system. All right.
God.
I'm good at that
The
shit.
Starcast.
The star. Nice. All right, Ben Burgis. Pleasure as always.
Bye, Ben.
Go get a tarot
Bye,
reading.
Lola.
Bye.
Thanks.
That's
Bye.
a little different.
No, I know it's different, but it's in the same realm. All right, I'm going to call into the
Actually-
system. Let me read you our first Discord question of the night while I call into the system. Marianne Williamson has apparently said over Twitter, the president is saber rattling towards Iran today, sending 1,000 troops to the Middle East. We ourselves are bullies here, and there is nothing more, and this is nothing more than the insanity of the military-industrial complex. Don't buy it. Comment from Adler. Thoughts on Marianne Williamson's Iran position? I would argue she has a better take on the situation on anyone in the DNC field besides Bernie. I would say absolutely. I love her take on it. What's your take on Marianne Williamson? Well, I call into the phone system.
I'm going to be completely honest. I have no idea who she is.
She's Oprah's
Sorry.
spiritual advisor.
She's Oprah's spiritual advisor, and she's running for president. And she just basically called bullshit on
She's running for
bothering
president?
Iran. Yeah.
I can't keep track with this stuff, guys. I'm just a goat farmer.
You're in a spy. Oh my God. You don't know who Marianne Williamson is? That's such an
There's too
Aquarius
many
thing to say.
people.
That's such an Aquarius thing to say.
But also, Trump totally said that Iran doesn't say death to America anymore. So, like, is he really saber rattling?
I actually like, you know what I like? I think it is hilarious that Marianne Williamson got into the debates and the governor of Montana didn't.
Wait, can you?
I'm totally
Can you
pro
show me
that.
what she looks like? Or I have my phone right here.
Yeah, I'm sure. No, let's
I'm
put
just
it up.
I'm
Let's
curious.
make it participatory.
And she's
Alyona.
actually
Don't go into your
Oprah's
own
spiritual
phone.
advisor.
Well, I think she's spiritually advised many people. There's a problem with it. I'm gonna try getting into the phones again, guys.
And she's
So
got good
bear with me.
energy too, since
Yeah.
she was born in Texas.
And what's her sign?
Oh, I don't
Yeah,
know.
what's her
I
sign,
don't know what
David?
the sign- I bet she would know.
Don't fucking rattle it off if you don't know her sign.
Oh, yeah.
Oh my goodness! Can I just say that randomly, right after
This is Marianne Williamson.
oh, she's pretty. Sorry, I just immediately objectified her.
That's totally okay. I don't-
Fitting right in.
I don't know. Yeah. What do you? Yeah. Welcome to the show.
She's hot.
Yeah. Finally, that was the first question
is
we
the
asked
hot or
ourselves.
not
We're
segment.
just like, on block 3, new age spiritual leader. Should she be running for? She's hot. Yes.
Listen, I'm just,
She is approved for the debate stage of
appreciating
hotness.
Another woman's beauty because I support all women.
Same.
Womp womp womp. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So I think we support Marianne Williamson. Let me take a call.
What else? What I mean? Okay, I'm going to read up on her platform next time we're discussing Marianne
Reparations,
Williamson.
peace, healthcare. No, she has a good. I mean, honestly, look, my only legit Mike Gravel's cool. Marianne Williamson is saying some cool stuff. I would have more openness to all this fucking around if Bernie wasn't running for president. Like, I think we got to be a little bit on the ball here.
Guys, we need to be serious.
Yeah, we need to be serious, guys. You're calling from not all of us can go and goat farm, Alyona. There are some of us that are still
Apparently,
yeah.
I can't either.
Yeah,
so,
right. So
yeah,
you better
I'm
vote for
SOL.
Bernie. You're not off being in Hawaii. You got some shit to do. You're calling from a Skype call, I believe. Who are you? Where are you calling from?
Yes. Michael, this is Conan the Vogue Barbarian again. Long time no speak. How goes it?
Wow,
It,
Conan.
it goes,
Yeah,
as you know,
yeah.
there's always a very short leash with me and these types of things. So let's just see how well you land
I have
it.
a little astrology lesson for you.
Okay, all right, promising. Conan, go ahead.
Yes. You see, there are 3 types of signs: cardinal, fixed, and mutable. And there are the 4 elements: earth, air, fire, and water. And Leo is a fixed fire sign, you see, and Aquarius is a fixed air sign. The other 2 fixed signs are Scorpio and Capricorn, I believe.
Right.
But in any case, you should delve into this. But of course, you girly men, foolish folks who do not seek the history of your culture if you do not investigate, speaking of astrology, the fire sign theater. You must investigate these people.
Okay, the fire sign theater. I believe you've called and mentioned this before.
What is the
I
fire?
will get it.
What does it mean that your sign is fixed?
I don't know, but I think we're going to keep it moving because I've gotten that pitch before.
Now I'm curious.
I will check that out. You're calling from an 818 area code. Who are you? Where are you calling from? In fact, caller, the fire sign theater. I'm making a note of it.
Okay, Michael, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Yeah, it's Dave from Jamaica again.
Dave
Hi,
from
Alyona.
Jamaica. How are you?
Hi.
Say hi to Alyona.
He did.
Yes, hi, Alyona. I
Hi.
remember
No, he
talking to you before
I
we
remember
discussed
talking to you.
DMX's poetry.
Oh, yeah.
So.
Alona's a big fan
No,
of
I think you're-
DMX and an admirer of what Marianne Williamson, even though she's being shy about it. I remember
They're
one
both
time.
hot.
I remember one time, drunken Alona telling me that DMX and Marianne Williamson were the yin and yang of her
Yep.
role models.
My idols.
Yep.
Mhm.
And
I got
while
tattoos, actually. One on each ass cheek.
that's true, Dave. All right,
so,
go ahead.
I just made this
I
awkward.
was
Keep
going
going.
to say, you're a good addition to the show, Alyona. I mean, you already have the tracksuit check, so that's on brand
Thank
already.
you. Michael
And-
told me that, he takes his stereotypes very seriously.
Very seriously.
That if I wanted to be considered for
That's exactly
co-hosting,
right.
I better look Russian as fuck or I was out the door.
That's right. I want to
So he kind of bullied me into it.
the Das.
No, well, I think, yeah, because it matches the style. Like, I expect you on some other days to come in a suit because I think Michael dresses like an Italian mobster. Sometimes it's a tracksuit, sometimes it's a suit,
I can be a Russian
fit.
mobster.
or a Russian mobster.
These are all good
So
tutorial
we're changing
advice,
the name of
Dave.
the show?
What is it, Dave?
No, so are we changing the name of the show to like TMBS AM or something? Would work? No.
No.
Cool. No, still TMBS.
No, we're not doing that.
It's still
Nope,
Michael's
not
show.
doing
I'm
it.
just
Yeah.
here for entertainment value.
We're all just here for entertainment value. Literally why
So,
we're on
I
Earth.
just,
Dave?
on a more serious, sorry.
Yes, on a more serious note, Dave. Please.
Yeah, on a more serious note, I was going to ask, with the whole, especially with the Trump admin, or maybe not so much the admin, but military, trying to push for war with Iran. For some reason, gut feeling, I'm not as worried because I don't think they're going to pull it off. I don't even think conservatives really even believe what they're selling. Or are you a little bit more worried?
What do you
I
think?
don't feel that worried. And again, it's like can't tell if it's because I've been in goat farm land and not paying attention to the news as much. It's like, but the truth is, when you aren't constantly watching and reading the news, you don't feel the hysteria that exists within this bubble.
Right.
That kind of just feeds itself. And so I would like to think that hopefully, no, we are nowhere near a real war with Iran, and this is more just like bluster for the press.
I mean,
No, I'm just remembering, like, with the Iraq war situation, and I could feel the hysteria, but
right.
don't
That's not
feel...
like that. It's
Yeah, I
definitely
know.
not like that.
And
It
obviously,
doesn't feel the
listen,
same.
we sent 1,000 troops. More troops have been deployed to the area. Like, it's no joke. But
I'm worried,
it's
but
going
I think,
farther.
I mean, and I want to say it's funny because, like, I think, like, there is so much, like, I mean, this is another good example of why, like, I mean, certainly people, and I think, honestly, like, just this show and this audience are definitely not people who are like melting down over every like tweet or whatever. So yeah, there's a hysteria, there's an obsessiveness that isn't healthy. And then I think there's like the other part of it where it's like there's some things that it's just like, you know, it's really horrible, right? Like what's happening to people in terms of immigration policy, like that, yeah, that's an obscenity that's happening every day. I don't know. Like, I think they're having a really hard time pulling this off and positioning this for a variety of reasons. And I think there's a way it can be resisted. On the other hand, I just think like, and I don't mean this to freak people out. I just think people need to really stay on it because like, look, obviously major players in this administration want to do this in like a very clear way. Like Mike Pompeo and John Bolton, I have no doubt are totally committed to this. They're really ideological. They're really dangerous. They're really demented. Israel is run, you know, by a far-right extremist government. The Saudis, the Emiratis have their own very extreme political calculations.
And all have enormous influence over the current administration.
And all have enormous, I mean, yes, like in fact, I mean, whatever else you say about Russia one way or another, I mean, the Emiratis, the Saudis, and the Israelis are like part of this administration. So, no, I mean, that being said, I mean, no, I'm totally not convinced that this will happen. But I also think that like you got to use it to, you know, again, this is another area where Bernie is like head and shoulders above the rest. He's talking about restoring this agreement. They all have said that they would, but this needs to be like at the center of the campaign. I mean, the fact that Trump pulled out of this is definitely one of the most catastrophic things he's done in like a real long-term way.
Can I just say one thing to that, though? Because I do think it's interesting that most of the Democratic candidates have said that they would re-enter the agreement. And it's like, I don't think it's that simple. You know,
No,
we've already,
all.
we've broken the trust.
Right.
We've broken the agreement. Why would Iran re-enter into it? You know, like the incentives aren't there for all of the other actors. And so I think that people are being a little overly simplistic and unrealistic when they say that. You know, it's like if they're trying to put the message out there that they supported this move and trying to create more diplomacy with Iran, then that's one thing. But just acting like, oh, we'll just rejoin it. That ship has sailed.
Right. And I think maybe that's all the more reason to say not only should you be talking about rejoining it, but you should be saying, I will engage in a full, robust diplomatic process with Iran. Because, I mean, look, like, clearly Iran does want this deal. That's why they've been bending over backwards to save it every step of the way.
Yeah.
The Europeans want it.
That's why they're like,
fought for it.
We'll do this every 60 days. Like they're giving you
Iranians
like
want
so
it.
much runway to be like, and then we'll make this other incursion, you know, or like take another step that doesn't abide by the deal, but we're giving you this warning months ahead of time.
They want it.
Yes.
So you need to demand that any Democratic candidate have like a serious diplomatic strategy for Iran. And that you also hit back against like the Adam Schiffs of the world. And again, we did that video a couple of weeks ago. Bernie's the only one who voted against an Iran sanctions package. And that's like where the rubber meets the road, because I think all the rest of these candidates are still indulging. Like, yes, we support the deal, but they're not acknowledging the trust that was broken of it. Exactly. And also they're still indulging in all this kind of just like Iran phobia, which is going to block the ability to actually restart a diplomatic process.
Oh my gosh.
It was a
I
deep
hiccuped.
But
Excuse
before,
me. I'm drunk. I'm like, yeah.
Because you weren't even that drunk for that point, though.
No, I'm not.
You like emerged sober
I
for an
just
Iran
hiccuped.
point. Can I have another beer, guys? Dave, one more point.
moment of clarity. Yeah. On a more fun note,
Yes.
since Alyona is part of the TMBS family,
Yes.
Alyona, you need to throw your superior impression skills since you already have a Russian accent down pat, so you'll be able to kill all the microphones.
Oh, that's pretty much, I guess that would be
You
the
can use
only
that.
impression I could do. Because
So-
like, I don't have any impression skills. Unless I kind of have an Ariana Huffington.
Oh, shit. This is what I'm talking
Darling.
about. So one proposal, and this is not NDA. I don't know how to do an Ariana. Just fucking work with me. It always starts with content first. Like, Alyona, would you like to be consciously decoupled from, or Would you like to continue as a host in exchange for a aromatherapy voucher?
Michael, I think it's really all about the work-life balance. You don't have to choose one thing or the other in life.
That's great.
Yeah, that sounds a very good Ariana impression. Thank you. I've been fucking pushing for something like that for a long time. I appreciate that that's finally dropped. All right, Dave, thank you for the call. Appreciate it.
Bye, Dave.
All right, let's do one more call, then we'll get to some stories. You're calling from an 832 area code. Who are you? Where are you calling from?
How's it going? It's Demetrius from Houston.
Demetrius, how are you? Thanks for calling. What's on your mind?
I'm doing good. First, I just wanted to say shout out to you guys for like the follow on Twitter. I did an interview with Ben Burgis for my podcast.
Oh, cool.
So you guys like follow me on Twitter and stuff like that. So that was really dope.
Awesome. Tell everybody the name of your podcast.
And stuff like that. So
tell the name of your podcast.
It's called Pathfinder. Basically exploring the human condition and stuff like that. And I have different guests on. And I talk to all sorts of people, philosophers, authors. But yeah, awesome. I just wanted to say thank you for the support. That was super dope.
Of course.
Like Pathfinder. That's cool. That's really deep, Demetrius. I like it.
What do Russians say about Americans looking for the meaning of life?
The what?
Like when Russian don't. Yeah, got you. Thank you.
Sorry.
I was slow in the
Took
uptake.
a minute.
That was good. No, I appreciate it. You just needed to do a stupid accent with it, and then I would have gotten it quickly.
The what?
The what? The meaning of this? Okay, I like that.
What
Demetrius,
is meaning?
what's on your mind? Pathfinder, check it out. Glad to help. What's on your mind besides that?
Basically, I just want to ask, like, how do you guys like understand like I guess it's a bit more of like a philosophical question, but how do you guys like understand your confidence as like leftists and socialists? Like, cause I really struggle with despair a lot because I do think that the capitalist system overall will fail. I mean, this system is just not sustainable for the long run. But there are just times where it's just like, damn, like what if we just keep pushing ourselves to the brink, end up destroying our environment, destroying ourselves? What if the inequality continues and all this stuff? And maybe that's a danger. Maybe that's a danger of having a sort of, I guess like a meta narrative of life, a story of life, like, everything is just going to keep progressing. So I was just curious, like, how do you guys like deal with that, or how do you guys deal with like, I guess those sort of like doubts? Does it make you like despair over the work that you do?
So Alyona, Alyona. So let me just guess. So Alona's nicotine, sugar, alcohol.
Yeah, like I said, a bad, horrible coping mechanism.
Oh, coke too. Oh shit. Postgame. Fuck. I thought we set that aside a couple years ago. We can't do that shit. We're in our 30s, Alyona. We can't fuck around like that anymore. That's serious business on our hearts.
A lot of breathing exercises.
Yeah, breathing.
No, but seriously, it's like I don't know what I identify anymore as politically, but the despair you're talking about, that's something that can apply to every part of life. People feel overwhelmed when you start to think about all of it. And so it's just like taking a deep breath, sitting back, thinking through one thing at a time. And I think being realistic that way, or at least trying to be.
I mean, I think it depends like which way you're coming at your concern, because like, I think that separate, like I was just on this meditation retreat, right? And so I wasn't reading the news for like 8 or 9 days. No news, no phone, like not ingesting all of this bullshit. And there is like a part of you when you kind of slow down like that you actually in a way can get even more like I don't know, I think like emotional is a bad word, because it's like you're not overwhelmed, you're not like in your head and freaking out, but you can clarity, like and when you have clarity about where we're at, there's a lot of pain that comes along with that, right? Like that's just the reality in terms of like all of the things you're talking about.
But you see beauty too.
That's what I'm saying. Is that exactly like the flip side is that there is a huge amount of things that are going right in ways that don't get emphasized, and there's also like huge human capacity to actually change these things, which I think
to say huge. I'm sorry, it's like
huge.
It's killing the vibe on all these really profound things that you're saying. Yeah,
because of the Trump thing. Don't let Trump spoil it. Don't have Trump derangement syndrome.
Because you're actually saying really good stuff.
No, but I think like it's. You're right though. What he fucking ruined that word.
I can't hear anything.
So what
past
is
huge.
the like? I think that there is a way of like getting to a space where you can actually acknowledge both of those realities. And I think like practically speaking, like I really do think, especially in the context, I will never understand how like socialist politics or left-wing politics, whatever, but honestly, particularly socialist politics, because I really do associate socialist politics with liberating a lot of people's time and having like a much greater expansion of like human capacity across the planet, with like drudgery and misery. Like kind of the point of it is there's all of this basic drudgery and misery, which like could be eliminated immediately. It's not that complicated to figure out how to spend resources that way. And then you open up people into like a much broader experience of life. So, and I think that part of the answer is you actually have to engage with those broader things while you're doing politics. So you're like a fully paid up member of the human race while you do it, and you're cultivating community, friendships, sports, like whatever your thing is, and you're balancing it out. Because yes, if you are just constantly in a funnel of how bad things are, and they are really bad, of course that's going to color your perception of life, and it's not fully accurate. Like, you know, being a Pollyanna is absolutely not accurate, but neither is the opposite scenario. Like both are not grounded. So I don't know if that helps, but
I would also suggest, if you're not familiar with him already, reading some of Alexander Coburn's work. Alexander Coburn was a really what? Oh yeah, he's a really phenomenal. He was a really phenomenal radical journalist. And one of his big messages, on top of all the incredible writing that he did, was really trying to bring a joy and an optimism to kind of left organizing, left politics, and an excitement about the future that we're all building, and really finding joy in that. It's like, you know, we are in a difficult situation, but, you know, we're also going up against Donald Trump and Jeff Bezos and all of these like hilarious villains. And I feel like trying to find, you know, some joy in the moment and some joy in the struggle is something that we can really, that can carry you forward outside of just sort of thinking about this meta narrative about this unbeatable system. Really looking at sometimes at the hilarity of the moment sometimes will give you a lot of, I don't know, at least for me, it gives me a lot of personal joy.
You got to expand the boundaries of things that you're experiencing and checking in with. I mean, because to me, again, like that is kind of the point, right? Like if you can liberate people from all of the like unproductive suffering, then you can have like productive and interesting suffering, which is sort of like the point of being alive.
Yeah.
Right?
Pretty much.
Yeah. No, but like seriously.
That's true.
Right? Like, I mean, that's why it disgusts me so much. You know, like I can relate on a personal level. I understand, you know, at least dealing with like some very serious material deprivation and the stress of that and the distraction of that and the pain of that is totally unnecessary and totally eliminatable. And then, but then that opens up the possibility to so much more we could be doing. And I think we need to think about that and keep in touch with things that are also not just like positive, like, oh, here's like a little piece of positive news, but literally the totality of experience, which includes some incredibly optimistic things. Incredibly is better than huge.
Can I just say,
Please.
I'm always very surprised, I guess, by like your enlightenment in that sense, where and that and your like maturity, where, you know, Michael texts me like, oh, I just got back from this meditation retreat, or you're like, yeah, I don't really gorge on food. Like you're so controlled all the time. I'm like, who are you? I feel like everyone's a fuck up And then
Oh,
all
no,
of a sudden,
no.
at one point in your life, you're like, "Wow, everyone like really has their shit together." And is it just me that's the fuck up? And
No,
you're one
I'm
of those
an
people who are
immense-
like, "I expected you to be more of a fuck up." I don't know why.
That doesn't make sense,
then-
Alyona. Well, now you'll find the
And
way
then I'm
I'm
like,
the fuck
God,
up because
Michael really has
why
his
the
shit
fuck?
together.
Why the fuck would you think that? So that's the way. That's the way I'm a fuck up. That's gonna trigger me for weeks.
You just seem so
Why
laid
did-
back and chill.
Why did Alyona think I was
That's
a fuck
what
up?
I mean.
No, of course I'm a total fuck up. That's why I have to like be relatively disciplined about shit. Because if I don't, the whole wheels will come off. Are you kidding me? But do you feel like, Bill, honestly, because we're all fuck ups and we all have made huge mistakes and we all have like our insecurities and all have our bullshit, which is another thing that annoys me about this like social media culture in so many ways. It's like nobody's being real about like who they are on any number of levels, and also like what they're struggling with to actually like authentically improve about, not just like put out a certain image. And like, but like I feel like when you like, the only way that I would even remotely accept your compliment as being like at all true is that I feel like in the last couple of years, like more willingness to actually be like, oh, I'm actually like super fucking neurotic about that. Ironically, that attitude allows you to be like way less neurotic.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
When you're just
Yeah,
like,
that's true.
yeah, I'm actually a fucking basket case. And then it somehow like degrades your basket.
When you
caseness.
acknowledge the problem, it's
Yeah.
step one. Yeah. and then
Yeah,
you're just
totally.
Like, oh, okay.
Yeah, you're
Like there's like a little bit of relief.
Yeah, like I guess
in
that's
some way.
negotiable instead of like fucking like resisting reality all the time.
Yeah.
So do you guys want to check out for a minute? Apparently Bernie's streaming now. Do you want to check that out for a minute? He's doing his Energizer Bunny.
Dunking right now,
just
dunking on kids
dunking.
on the live stream.
Yeah, that would be amazing. You know what that reminds me of? Do you guys remember that Dave Chappelle sketch?
No.
Where it's the funniest Dave Chappelle sketch ever, where a kid, his make-a-wish is it's like a make-a-wish kid's wish is to like play Nintendo with Dave Chappelle. But Chappelle shows up and the joke is that he gets way too into the game. So he's just like, oh, you about to die a premature death. And he's like, nurse. Timothy's being a punk bitch.
my
and he
God.
just like goes on. I thought of that with Bernie dunking on that kid.
But that's what Bernie was doing over the weekend. Like, he did have that bank shot video, but he also posted a bunch of videos of him just destroying like all of his grandkids in softball.
Well, it's not a bad idea, frankly, to show everybody how healthy he is,
Yeah.
right? I mean,
Yeah.
there is a reason behind
For
this.
sure.
Yeah. All right, let's
Here's
check
the
this
last
out.
few minutes. It's over.
All right,
now,
let's
but-
check out a minute of Bernie stream, and then we'll do the Bernie Lula story.
Is a religious bigot.
Whoa.
His strategy to win re-election is to divide the American people up based on the color of our skin, based on where we were born, based on our religion, based on our sexual orientation. Our job is to bring the American people together around an agenda that works for all of us, and not just the wealthy campaign contributors and the people on top.
All right.
When
I feel like I
over the
heard
last
enough. It was like,
30
he's a religious bigot trying to divide everybody. I want to bring us together.
But I think that's beautiful. No,
Enough
but I
said.
love that he tells that story, like the Keonga Taylor quote, because I love that he's talking about exactly what Trump is, but making it real. Not just this like, that's not who we are. Who the fuck are we? I don't even know what that means. Because again, I don't buy like the idea that like America's this like profoundly, uniquely evil place. Not at all. But then on the other hand, it's like, this isn't who we are, Joe Biden. Like, we've been this in some version since the inception of this country. Like,
Yeah.
what the fuck are you talking about? So when Bernie does that, he's saying like, he's dividing and he's exploiting these things, and it's connected with another exploitation, which is to like hoodwink you on the fact that your life is bad because of the economy and because of corporate power. Like, I'm impressed. Obviously, I'm a huge supporter of the guy, but I just think it is super impressive that somebody at this stage in their career and life is getting better.
Yes.
Is very impressive to me. Like, that is not a
very true.
typical narrative.
That kind of change.
That's not a typical
the
narrative.
willingness to change and to learn at that stage.
That's
Rare.
not typical.
No.
That's definitely not typical. That should be a model for us. What do you think of Joe Rogan? Let's tell this Joe Rogan story.
Yeah, so I don't know this Joe
Well,
Rogan
you'll
story
find
what
out
happened
as it
with you.
goes on.
I don't have a ton of thoughts on Joe Rogan other than that, like, every now and then my husband, will be like, "Oh, I heard this on the Joe Rogan podcast," and I'll be like,
Start. I want to know. Go back to the first part when you were impersonating your husband, and then you fell off.
"What
was
did
that?
I don't even know what was the."
You were literally like, "Oh, I just heard this. I just heard this on the Rogan show." I get it.
Well,
we do all sound like that.
Jake,
it's fair enough. It's not wrong.
Jake does Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and obviously Joe Rogan, is super into MMA and stuff. And I
Right.
feel like that's probably why he started listening to him. And then me, without really knowing much about Joe Rogan, I'll just be like, "Isn't he, like promoting certain conspiracy theories sometimes?" But then I'll still listen to certain interviews he does. Like I listened to the one he did with Michael Pollan.
That was a great
I listened
interview.
to the one he did with Jamie Metzel. I think that they're the one with Elon Musk. I think there are some situations where
great on Michael Pollan.
well, Elon Musk, because I was doing a documentary about Tesla, and so I had to. That was a forced work thing.
Elon
but
Musk is such a schmuck. I'm so glad people
some
are
of his
catching up
interviews
on
I
that
think
one.
are great.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, of course. They are. Some of them are great.
And listen, at the same time, like I wish I had 3 hours to sit with all these people, and get them drunk and get them to open up to me. Like it's an extremely unique situation for an interviewer to have that much kind of access and control. And he's made that name and built that name for himself. But again, I don't actually know a lot about his other problematic.
So I'm not doing this segment to get into all of his
Okay.
problematic things.
But no, I'm just being honest,
like genuinely
I
curious.
just don't know that much about the guy.
No, so I met my Joe Rogan position. I feel like manages to piss everybody off because, believe it or not, there are definitely some people who follow me avidly or patrons and so on who really like the guy, even though they disagree with this and that, but they think that he's like unfairly maligned.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's people, and what pisses them off is that I am very willing to say, like, no, Joe Rogan absolutely is an example by like repeating right-wing talking points about like land redistribution in South Africa and giving like an uncritical.
That was the one that I saw.
Yeah, like that's a problem. I think to me, giving an uncritical conduit for Jordan Peterson and Sam Harris and so on. Yeah, obviously I'm going to have problems with that. And I also I understand that people that I know in the transgender community definitely have problems with some of the ways that he's framed and talked about that issue. And I also do particularly understand that, like, look, yes, he's going on and having like this conversation about like UFC fighters and transgender people.
And doing mushrooms.
And it's like, look, but you can think about that one way or another. But I just think like, look, the bottom line is I understand the fundamental concern when you're like, look, we have, how many people have been murdered this month because they're transgender, and in the context of like filtering that conversation. So I totally get it.
What has he said?
I don't really. I mean,
transgender
I
people?
know that he's got I think his main concern is about transgender identity and fighting, which is honestly like, to me, it's just
it's such a problem.
I
such
mean,
an
that's
issue,
to me,
right?
honestly, it's just like, really, like this is the big kind of focal point of conversation. Like
ridiculous.
part of the job that we all have that Matt always points out is just like literally picking what gets attention.
Yeah.
So it's just like, in
Yeah.
the same way that there's plenty of stuff in like left-wing outrage culture machine that it's like, sometimes I disagree with it. Sometimes I even vaguely agree with it, but I'm not going to spend 2 minutes talking on it because we might go to war with Iran. Like you got to fucking decide where you're going to put your energy. If I'm talking about transgender people, I'm going to talk about their civil rights and the fact that their lives are threatened, not like,
Yeah.
whatever.
And I'll just shout out to people who want more info on the proper orientation towards like trans athletes, for instance. Dave Zirin.
Right. Dave Zirin is great on that stuff. I agree. So, and then on the
Great
other hand,
reporter and writer.
yeah, he's a super good writer. And then on the flip side, like Joe Rogan is not Dave Rubin. Joe Rogan is a guy, like, I think you're a perfect example, like right there. I really doubt that you're like, oh, I don't really know who Dave Rubin is, but I've seen him do some interesting interviews. Like you either probably, if you're a normal person, don't know who he is, or if you do, you're like, yeah, that guy's some dumb idiot on YouTube who interviews a bunch of right-wing assholes. Now, Joe Rogan has a reputation that functions really differently in a lot of different circles. And so like, and he has a likability and he has a talent as a host that is undeniable, even with some politics that I just fundamentally disagree with. And other times, whatever.
Yeah. And he has
So-
a reach that's incredible.
and he
Like,
has
the
a huge
people that
reach.
come on his show.
100%. So of course, like the context of this is that obviously, Joe, I'm available and I will see you there. So even though I doubt I doubt he will, because though I think we might actually get along, and he might learn some stuff and I might learn some stuff. I'm not. He would have to set aside maybe some of his thoughts about Sam Harris.
It would create some problems in the crew.
It would create some problems in the crew.
But that I just had a memory too that he also was like buddies with Alex Jones and had him like
he's buddy with Alex Jones.
I have then to say, had him back on.
That's in one. I'm just gonna say, and this is pre this new stuff that's coming out about Alex Jones, which like I'm serious if that actually holds up. Like I don't even want to do the song anymore. But like to me, like okay, again. Alex Jones, perfect example. When Alex Jones talks about transgender people as an example, that needs to be strenuously fought against. And he is a conspiracy theorist and he is a bigot and so on. But there is like this other part of like, I'm sorry, I just can't take it that seriously. Like if Joe Rogan and Alex Jones want to like fuck around on air for 3 hours, yeah. I don't care.
I get that. But wasn't the whole thing was Joe was trying to, I thought, in making amends, was also trying to really like understand Alex and like how he went astray.
Well, that's his
and how he went so deep, and it's like.
But that's Rogan's shtick with everybody. I mean, that is his shtick, and that's and a major advantage of that is long form interviews with interesting people at times, and a huge disadvantage of that is you're talking with. Maybe a crypto fascist or a crypto Nazi, and you're having the same uncritical attitude. That's a problem. But Joe Rogan was talking with David Pakman a couple of weeks ago, and this was a problem because...
So was David Pakman on his show?
I guess David Pakman was on his show.
That's big.
That was big for him.
I've known David
Is that
for
his first
years,
time?
yeah.
Or?
I mean, I
didn't
haven't
know
seen
that.
him in a gazillion years.
I think that was his first time.
I knew him way back
I
in
didn't
the
know
day.
that you knew David Pakman.
Like I said, been a while, but...
that was a big one for the Pakinator.
Yeah.
So David Pakman was on
David.
the show. Definitely good for David. And apparently, I haven't watched it, but apparently he did a really good job. And they were talking about the Steven Crowder YouTube thing, which is, I'm not going to get into now. But I will get into that. Joe made an unfortunate comparison between Steven Crowder's gay baiting and bigotry towards Carlos Massa and the incredibly hilarious and very fun, such fun content that I do and Sam does about Dave Rubin that I even have a sense, and I'm totally projecting here, that Joe might actually enjoy some of our content on Dave Rubin, and even though Dave might be an associate of his. I have no idea. I'm just projecting. I'm just using a little bit of my metacognition from meditating here. That's my guess. But then Joe Rogan, who seems like a really nice guy, this happened, and this was super unfortunate.
That's how people talk.
Yeah.
But when you're doing that, but you're doing it, you're broadcasting it. I think we're all learning in this process of doing podcasts and video blogs and all this stuff. We're all learning that you're not alone. You are doing this and you're saying it in a way that that person's going to see. And the same could be applied to Dave Rubin and Sam Cedar dunking on him all the time. It's kind of the same thing, and Michael Roberts as well. It's the same
Pause
sort
it.
of thing.
No.
Michael Roberts.
Michael Roberts. So I first saw this, and I honestly...
That's gotta hurt. Was that just like a knife through the chest right there?
I actually honestly thought it was really funny. And I was thinking of, before we pull this tweet up, don't pull it up just yet, but I thought that Michael Roberts would be a hilarious character. Like I could do Joe Rogan, like the thing of like the problem with David Rubin is like he wants to talk about ideas, but like if you're going to enter into that idea dojo, you have to be a black belt, right? And so this guy talks about fucking ideas, but then like you're going to embarrass yourself because like you're in the idea dojo. So I actually didn't think much of it. To be really honest, and I don't know if we'll clip this. Well, I guess, whatever. Maybe you'll clip it out. I honestly was like, oh, that's good, because I had sort of heard some other things indirectly that maybe he was aware of who I was and did not like some of the things that I had said. So I was like, hey, I'm Michael Roberts, hey, what the fuck?
Well, so look at that. Joe Rogan has mentioned your name.
So now
you're famous.
All right, like Alyona, let's not act like this guy is Drake, okay? Like let's calm down.
I'm joking.
Yeah, this is not Beyonce. All right, this is not Kawhi.
On that note, somebody tweeted something the other day. It was the guy who, forgot his fucking name. I think he was on your New York show about how Beyonce is
Mike Racine. No,
known
Trevor
as like one
T.
of the most amazing performers, but compared to all the others, she has almost no huge hit songs. And I'm a huge Beyonce fan.
That's actually true.
I know. And
That's
I was like
a really weird, interesting
I was like
point.
crushed. I'm like, oh my God, so sad.
like
Like
single ladies.
And I had to
I like Rihanna better than
acknowledge it.
Beyonce, just to keep it real. Rihanna's more fun.
This is it's a huge debate within my marriage, so you and Jake would get along.
Jake is
well.
correct. So
I like Rihanna's music better, but just like love Beyonce.
everybody loves Beyonce. Actually, Solange is better than Beyonce too. So facts.
Fired.
Facts. So what's funny, I don't get notifications from people I don't follow on Twitter. So I saw somebody favorited this tweet, and Joe Rogan tweeted, he said, "At Michael Brooks, just found out I accidentally called you Michael Roberts in the David Pakman show. My apologies. It was completely accidental."
Invite him on the show.
And then he gave me the follow. I said, which was a really big deal.
That's a big
So
deal.
then I tweeted back and I said, "No worries, brother." And now is as good a time as any to have an open, high-level exchange of ideas. And I will do ketamine. I will smoke. I will talk about. If we spent 2 hours talking about Illmatic, but my goal would be that Joe Rogan would do Sam Harris impressions with me, because honestly, like I like Joe Rogan is friends with Dave Chappelle. There's got to be more fun people to hang out with. So available.
Yeah, you know he has some fun
Available.
friends.
You see that picture of them with all the IDW guys? It's like, you've been in better groups, Joe.
Yeah, Joe. You've been in much better groups.
I was
much
in
more
Santa
fun.
Monica a couple years ago with my sister, and I saw Dave Chappelle just like
Really?
walking down the street, and for just some reason I was like, "Hey, Dave." Or he like turned around because it sounded so familiar, and he's like looks at me like, "Do I know you?" And I was like, "I don't know. I'm just a fan. Like, what's up, man? How you doing?" But I realized that's the trick with celebs. You know, you
That's
just
the
be
trick with
like,
celebs.
my sister's done it with George Clooney, where she's like, "Hey, George, so great to see you." And they've all met so many people. They don't want to be rude and pretend like they don't remember you.
That is actually a super good tactic. That's a really good tactic.
Like, Dave is, oh no, I said, "Dave, is that you?" That's what I said.
You said, "Dave, is that you?"
Because he was like standing on the crosswalk, kind of looking the other way.
That's awesome.
And then we invited him to have a drink with us, and he didn't join.
He's a Muslim. He's not going to drink alcohol with you. Get out of your mind.
Can I ask you a really serious question right now that I apologize has to be done on air?
Yes.
How much longer of the postgame do we have?
You can leave when you need to
No,
leave.
can I just use the restroom?
Of
Because I
course.
drank a beer and now I got to pee.
Yes, of course. Of course.
Okay, yeah.
We're going to start. We only have a couple more segments to get to, but we'll start this one. We got to do this Andrew Yang thing. We'll do the Andrew Yang thing and then the Bernie thing. So, all right. In case we clip this, I'm going to try really hard, because Andrew Yang fans do not seem to have, in general, a very well-developed sense of humor. So I'm going to try not to make any jokes about Andrew Yang. Although I don't think that the jokes that we've done have been particularly cutting or nasty. And nothing that we have said about Andrew Yang is predicated on a personalized premise about the guy. I have no idea what his intentions are. He could be a very nice guy. My problem is that offering $1,000 a month as an opt-in system could prove to be devastating for people who rely on serious benefits. It will have a long-term encroaching effect on all universal systems of welfare. I'm unclear what his position on Medicare for All is, and like other things, it seems to very much change depending on whether he's talking to a left-wing host or a right-wing host. My sense is he supports some kind of public option. I know that he opposes a $15 minimum wage. And I also know that he doesn't have any other plans for, like, as an example, if you give people $1,000 a month without universal rent control legislation as an example, most of that money, I have no doubt, will be absorbed by landlords. What other problems have we had on a policy level with Andrew Yang, guys?
I mean, just the way that he frames his non-support for a raise in the minimum wage exposes that he really does see his UBI as a subsidy for employers who aren't willing to raise the wages of the people that they're employing.
Right.
And it's basically a system that he is creating to save capitalism, the system that we have right now, from the problems that it's creating through a tax on the majority of people, while at the same time taking away benefits from those who need it the most and putting them at a lower level. So like if you are already unable to achieve so much wealth because you don't have the same abilities as others, and you're not able to work, now you're in a situation where everyone else is $1,000 richer than you each month.
Yeah. Yep.
We need to illustrate this point because it's something Yang fans never understand. Which is like, let's say I have $1,200 a month in handicap transportation costs, right? I don't get Yang bucks because I need that $1,200. That means every one of you guys is getting the Yang bucks. So you can buy some video games, maybe go to the coast or something, like Airbnb something. I can't do that because I have to get this wheelchair. There's no reason that he exempts people with disability payments, for instance, other than ideological reasons of attacking the welfare state.
Right. And doesn't he also say, or the logic, and again, it depends on which audience he's speaking to, but if you have enough people opting out of these programs, then they become much easier to attack because they help less people, so therefore they're more politically vulnerable. Add to which, the whole thing is funded by a VAT tax. Now, a lot of people have a lot of weird ideas about what this means, but the reality is that it's a value-added tax. That is the most regressive type of taxation known to humankind. Because if you are poor, more of your income is taken up by that tax on necessities. That's just reality. He says that this is a VAT that is aimed at companies like Amazon, because it will be a VAT that will hit transactions with Amazon. This makes very little sense because when he says transactions, as far as I understand, that means on your end, on the consumer end. I don't see how that helps tax Amazon. Maybe he means a slight increase in sales tax for Amazon, but I'm not clear from anything he said. And this is also the same person who rejects a wealth tax out of hand because it would be politically impossible in the Mehdi Hassan interview. This is the argument he made. So he's saying on one hand that he'll use a tax which is universally recognized as hitting consumers to hold Silicon Valley company monopolies accountable, but then he won't go after them on trust busting or tax grounds because that's politically impossible. So I just request, and I know people who love him are very touchy and very, very emotionally invested in this, but just like to use the terminology you like, just follow the logic of that argument a little bit. You want to implement a value-add tax on consumer goods that will target consumers. You say it will hit Amazon, but you don't particularly spell it out, and you can send me the links if he spells out what version of sales tax versus consumer tax, what version will hit the company on the other end, fine. But then we all know he won't do any big, bold thing to actually hold these companies accountable because supposedly that's politically unacceptable, politically impossible. So think of how that actually is going to end up playing out. It will be profoundly regressive.
And just to hit one more point about this subsidy for employers, think of a company like Walmart. Right? Walmart, pays their employees poverty wages that they have to use government programs to get by. Under Yang bucks, if, for example, if you got, let's say, $800 a month in food stamps, you would pick to take his UBI over that. And that's the way that they frame it. So what's happening now to those workers is everyone else is now getting an extra $1,000 on top of it, while this worker who's basically is already being subsidized by the federal government because this one of the wealthiest companies in the world refuses to pay them a living wage. Yang wants to jump into that by continuing to subsidize those workers while creating a much larger wealth gap between those workers and the rest of society.
And so we're going to play this Yang clip in a second where he confirms everything that we've been saying in his own words. But the reason that I care about this, because look, the reality is that this is basically a novelty candidacy that has like no currency outside of online. If you mention this to normal people, they don't know who he is. Mm-hmm. But it disturbs me profoundly that one, any like energy that could be going into something constructive like Sanders is going into this. And secondly, he's monopolizing space in an area, that it is ultimately going to matter. Are robotics going to cost people jobs in the future? Yes, to some extent. It's actually disputed, and he might be exaggerating those effects. He might even be exaggerating the effects of what kind of jobs are going to be lost first. Some of the jobs that actually will be lost fairly soon, according to some people, are like white-collar jobs. But the idea that his answer to this is to capitulate to Silicon Valley and these companies just as a matter of course, and then pay people off with a relatively speaking small amount of money that will be distributed in a very unfair way that jeopardizes the welfare state is a big problem. And I'll just say, look, if you want to add UBI to a full Medicare for all social democracy system that is paid for through reclaiming wealth taken by the corporate sector and oligarchs, cool, I'm with it. But that's not what he's proposing. Here he is on Dave Rubin, of all places, talking about what he's really up to.
When you say everyone, you mean the person that's from someone that's unemployed to someone that is worth $20 million. They're both getting that $1,000?
Yep, that's right.
Okay, now how are we going to pay for this thing, right? That has to be the next question.
Yes. So first, it ends up costing a lot less than most people think, and there are a few reasons for this. Number one is that about half of Americans are already getting direct support from the government in some form. So my dividend would be universal, but it's opt-in, and if you opt in, you forego benefits from certain existing programs. So the headline cost goes down a lot very quickly.
So so this is like someone that's getting some other social welfare or something, and then if they choose to take the UBI, so like what type of thing would they lose? Like food stamps or like?
Yes, so it's full food stamps, housing subsidies, fuel subsidies,
right.
Cash and cash-like programs. We have about 120 welfare programs, most of which are cash or cash-like. So this excludes Medicaid, but it would include food stamps and most other welfare programs.
Right. And can you split the difference on that? So could you say I'm going to only take $500 a month UBI, and I'm going to take, $500 a month? So you can't. So you have to pick one, basically.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so I've talked to people who are on various welfare programs, and they love the idea of getting $1,000 unconditional because they dislike the case manager.
I'm sorry. They like it, and he's going to go and just list these bureaucratic
I love that
bullshit.
idea, Mike.
Yeah, it's just a great idea. No, but this is the same thing that offended me to begin with. This is analogous to slumlords and the real estate speculators in this city going to people who are totally cash strapped and getting them out of apartments that are saving their lives and their housing situation, because they're so desperate for liquidity that they will take a deal that makes no sense in the long term. If on balance, your life is just barely getting by through a fusion of these services, you will lose on net $1,000 in cash, but you will be very tempted to take it because you're cash poor. Mm-hmm. It's an extraordinarily manipulative idea, and that might not be his intention. He might be a wonderful guy, but those are the implications. That's the reality of what this policy does.
And this is the reality about UBI that we've all been talking about before we knew who Andrew Yang was.
Right.
Like 3 years ago, we were having this exact discussion. Like, hey, a UBI might come down the pike. If it looks like this, it's bad. And it looks like this.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. So let's finish this out.
And they love the idea of getting $1,000 unconditional because they dislike the case manager, the reporting requirements, everything else. And so you can reduce the enrollments in our existing program significantly. And it brings down the headline cost very quickly, because if someone's already getting $700 in benefits, then the cost is $300 instead of $1,000.
Do we have good accounting numbers on actually how much people are getting? Like, I'm going to guess that a certain amount of people, it may be one thing for food stamps, but when you talk about housing subsidies and things like that, that has to be way more. I mean, the one that I always use is that my sister and her husband live in New York City, struggling to get by. They both have full-time jobs, 2 kids. You can imagine how expensive schools are, and just living in Manhattan and the rest of it. And half of their building is market price and half is rent subsidized. And then what happens is, and I know you know this, is that generation after generation live in the same apartment then for $400.
Okay, so wow, that's Dave's only ability to understand anything has to be mediated through having a sister. But, look, so what is he saying there? He's talking about a gradual hollowing out of those vital programs in exchange for a cash transfer, which will be a net loss for a lot of people. Now, if you're middle class and you're concerned about this, I'll stop in a second, but I just want to say, one, advocate and go to Bernie Sanders and go to a good candidate like him and say, look, I get that the Yang thing is bullshit, but I'd like you to order, on top of everything else, as we reclaim money from the oligarchic class, hit people with a UBI. Great. If that's an add-on to everything else and not a substitution for, excellent. And on the other hand, if you think that there is going to be some type of big stimulative effect from this, it mostly won't be. It will be for a little. You know what? It will be great for the podcast business. Yeah. But in a lot of places, this money will just get sucked up by added rents.
Yeah.
Because there's no control on it to begin with. The first place this will go is landlords' pockets.
Yeah, go to Ruben's example of his sister's rent in New York City. If I'm a New York City landlord, I'm thinking, wait, every one of these people has an extra $1,000 a month. I'm getting me a third of that at least.
Absolutely. And it doesn't just need to be New York. It can also be in all of these Midwestern places that these people are always talking about.
And it's just like, you look at, when we're talking about rents, for example, the problem with rents in the United States is that the value that you have to pay to your landlord is based on the speculative value of the property itself, which is a capitalism problem, which has created a very unsustainable system in the United States where people can't afford to live really anywhere.
So worry about capitalism, not robots. And if we had a different economic system, these innovations would be freeing up your time and creating broad stakeholder value, not threatening the little meager livelihood you have to begin with. And that's all Andrew Yang is saying. Like, look, do you want a future where the argument is between Peter Thiel saying that there should be private armies of robots that kill poor people on the street, or like the Salesforce guy saying, oh, let's give them a little cash transfer? I still think we can do better than that. So that's why I'm very skeptical of Andrew Yang's incredible shrinking of our political horizons.
I still think and hope that we don't let the tech world dictate future policy that way too.
I would share that hope, Alyona. That's why I'm very concerned.
Primarily, they are the ones always talking about a UBI.
Right. Absolutely. And it's like, clear why.
And it's, and it's wrapped in this like benevolence of like, we realize the impact our technology is having on the world and on society. And so like, we want to start these conversations, but it's problematic to say the least.
To help with connectivity.
All right, what we're going to do is we got to do this Bernie and Lula thing, and then let's play a Cornel West clip, and then we'll head towards wrapping up. But we got to do this, obviously, because, look, if you're just watching this, we have covered the political imprisonment of Lula da Silva while it was happening. In fact, we covered this story on this show before he was taken to prison on these this is an insane story, because if you think about it, what happened to Lula is what Trump is always saying falsely is happening to him. That he literally was targeted by a corrupt judicial system and politically imprisoned. And conversely, Bolsonaro basically gets to benefit and sort of do what Trump is always saying he wants to do, which is like, Bolsonaro got to be the president of Brazil because the candidate that was beating him in the race was put in jail. Locked him up. He locked him up. That was a helpful head start. Right before we went to air, there was a new release of The Intercept in Brazil that basically showed that the former president, Henrique Cardoso, who was president of Brazil in the 90s and has been a virulently and bitter and disgusting critic of Lula, had a deal with the prosecutors where basically Moro told the prosecutors to lay off of Cardoso, even though they had evidence of his corruption, because he supported Lava Jato. So it's another example. Because he's smart. So this is another example of the corruption of Lava Jato. And look up Henrique Cardoso. He wrote a book called The Accidental President of Brazil. And he's from an ultra elite background and clearly always, loathed Lula for being more significant and popular than him globally, because he felt that was entitled to him. Because like Pete Buttigieg, he speaks a lot of languages.
Does he have a daughter that can do comedy opinions for the New York Times?
I think he might be right on the border of a daughter that could do comedy opinions for the New York Times. So this is another area where Bernie just stands out, and he stands out in a field of people who have no foreign policy or awful foreign policy, or even someone like Tulsi Gabbard, who has signaled the right things on Venezuela or Julian Assange or Edward Snowden, but is an isolationist. I keep telling you, She is not running a campaign of solidarity, of internationalism. That's why she hasn't said a word about the most prominent political prisoner in the world. Bernie Sanders tweeted this out last week. During his presidency, Lula da Silva oversaw huge reductions in poverty and remains Brazil's most popular politician. I stand with political and social leaders across the globe who are calling on Brazil's judiciary to release Lula and annul his conviction. I'd add the 2018 election is totally illegitimate. I like that he says, I'm standing with political and social leaders across the globe. Like, that really underscores the distinction of the offering here that nobody else has. You know, I mean, you're not going to hear this from Elizabeth Warren. And Joe Biden, you know, the Obama administration has a terrible record with regards to Brazil. So I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, but it's interesting because it's one of those things where, on one hand, you know, unfortunately, we tend to be so far removed from global issues within the United States that I think that most voters wouldn't even expect a presidential candidate to have a position on something like this, because they're like, oh, it's Brazil, like who knows about Brazil? And yet if it comes to Venezuela or Iran or, you know, these other countries that have just always been within the orbit of what we consider our purview and our national interest, then it's a completely different story.
Or if we're hyping to destabilize, because obviously Brazil is, right? Like, that's why we were involved in doing this, because it's the biggest country in Latin America. But of course, like, I mean, you know, that's like the great example, right? And I'm not to say, like, of course Maduro's committed some abuses, but actually nothing in an electoral sense as extreme as this. I mean, if the United States was trying to do regime change in a country and they said, wait a second, the former two-term president who's internationally respected was terrorized by a legal system and a media system, put in jail without any material evidence when he led the race by double-digit points, and then held in solitary confinement, you would hear about this 24 hours a day. But because we supported it happening, I have no doubt, and because it benefits the type of people who we want in power there, nothing to say, you know, except from Bernie. So, and I guess definitely props to Rokan as well. Ask any person that claims to be progressive, and maybe even a Democrat on this, how they have not said anything on this is appalling.
But I don't think because they haven't been forced to.
And they need to be forced to.
Nobody in an interview in a town hall has been pressed on this issue.
You're totally right. And they need to be forced to. And I would just add, like, especially if you're coming at me with Tulsi Gabbard shit, I don't think you'll hear anything because I think this is not Tulsi Gabbard's politics, right? But if you're going to go and make a whole thing of like that she's really the peace one and really the anti-imperialism ones, I don't hear about this.
Trump was an anti-imperialist too, right?
Right. Word.
Supposedly on the debate stage.
He was really fun on the debate stage.
He and Tulsi agree on generals in the cabinet, not really a problem.
Yeah.
And the war on terror.
Right. Exactly.
I do miss the presidential debates when Ron Paul was in them, just because it really ruffled so many feathers
he was just, like,
on the
flopping
Republican
around.
stage. No, but with foreign policy in particular,
it
it was like that to me was always the most entertaining thing, just because he made everyone so visibly uncomfortable with what he said.
Do you remember the moment Trump said to Jeb Bush that was a big fat mistake going to Iraq?
Yeah.
In the debates?
I don't remember
that. Was amazing because Jeb was doing his he's just like, you know, mistakes were made, but blah, blah, blah. And Trump's just like, people make mistakes, but boy, that was a beauty.
It was the debate.
A big fat one.
That was a big fat mistake.
It was the debate that was within 48 hours after Scalia died. So Scalia died, and then Trump goes up to Jeb saying, like, we all make mistakes, but that's a big fat mistake.
Big fat one.
And I remember
we were dancing Hotline Bling to Scalia dying. Then Trump owned
the brief
Bush.
golden era.
There was a minute when this disgusting real estate fascist was owning these totally emasculated nothing Republicans, and this noble old socialist might have won the Democratic primary. We were just like, wow. Things are kind of nice here for a minute.
But that's why
this is working for me.
I know you keep saying about people like Andrew Yang or whoever that they're just taking air out of the room, you know, from the focus that needs to be on Bernie Sanders, but it's part of the process,
right?
You know, and I hated it so much in the 2016 election when people were saying the same thing about Bernie Sanders, right? It's like, well, the goal here is just like to win the presidency. We shouldn't be dividing the party and focusing on other people. And it's about like making, at the time, obviously, a lot of those people thought that Hillary Clinton should be the nominee. But so not that I'm, you know, knocking who you're choosing here, but I think let the process play itself out.
I mean, my thing is like, it just depends where you're coming from, right? Like, I guess I have a problem with people who are like committed. If you're committed to a certain set of politics, it's just like, practically speaking, this is the game.
Right, but anybody who runs for president also has to be a little bit of an egomaniac. I mean, like, consider what you're doing. And so as committed as you might be to the policy and to the vision that you have, you're still, you know, like, you're still battling with this ego thing. And so you're never gonna choose what you think is maybe better for the party overall, for the election.
No, I'm not talking about these. No, look, Andrew Yang I don't expect anything from Andrew Yang. I'm just talking about, like, even to me, like, I'm just not, it's not that they shouldn't run or what. Okay, it's like different things. Andrew Yang is bringing people down a bad path. So I just like actually have a problem with it, right?
Okay, fair enough.
Then there's like, you know, Marianne Williamson is a cool lady. I'm not even joking. Like, I like a lot of things that she said, but it's like, is this really the time to like irony donate a dollar to her? You know what I mean? Like, people are doing like it. To me, you know what? Like, if Bernie wasn't in this race, yeah, maybe it is time to irony donate to Marianne Williamson, right? Like, and even like, you know, and then, you know, even when it really comes out, like, you know, what, like, if Tulsi Gabbard gets 2%, that's shaved off of Bernie. Fuck that. Yeah. You know, like, this is the flip side too, though. Like, you're totally right. Look, like, anybody can run, anybody can do their thing, but like, I'm also not like the League of Women Voters. You know what I mean? Like, I have a preference, and like, all right, let's fight it out.
I get it. I'm just saying, think about it, because you also are operating under this, you know, assumption of like, this is the candidate, the chosen candidate should be so X, Y, Z, which is very much what happened in 2016, you know, to another degree, which, you know, might be happening with Biden, unfortunately, this time around too. But just saying, just be careful with it. Kind of like,
well, I think
so. You support Kamala Harris, Alyona? Is that what you're saying?
I know. I don't.
Alona's a Kamala Harris supporter. I get.
You know who
disagrees with you?
It's great.
Cornel West.
It's great that we have so many people who are going to be on the debate stage. It's great that you see the process at work. That's all I have to say.
There's a couple of them that really don't need to be there. I think we can all agree with that. Jesus Christ. You're gonna get. I wish Eric Sawell would walk in the room right now after she just did that little like civics soliloquy.
I didn't say you need to give him an hour of time.
Isn't everybody happy that I'm here to get 200 votes and waste everybody's time with bullshit? All right,
yeah, well, guess what? I'll never get to run for president because I wasn't born here. So I'm just bitter.
Ooh. Well, I'm very sorry. Forgive me, Father. So
just a lowly old naturalized citizen.
Well, you can run for governor. Let's play a clip. This is Cornel West, who is definitely my favorite American public intellectual, probably global public intellectual. Here he is. First clip, he's talking about Bernie Sanders and radical democracy.
Well, it's interesting. One of the things that Senator Sanders said, and he said on the program earlier this week as well, is that Donald Trump's actually a socialist. He's just a corporate socialist, not a socialist, a democratic socialist.
When Martin Luther King Jr. said we need a reshaping of our priorities in terms of vision, values, and virtues. This is the primacy of the moral and the spiritual as it relates to a systemic social analysis of power, be it empire, be it capitalism, white supremacy, male supremacy, homophobia, transphobia, what have you. And so what we saw, and this is what made Brother Bernie's speech so historically significant. We've never seen in the history of American presidential politics this kind of thoroughgoing democratic. It was radically democratic. It allowed for those Stone called everyday people, those James Cleveland called ordinary people, to be center stage. Not the elites, not stock market, not the powerful, but everyday people.
It's sort of, I don't know if it's ironic.
So that's exactly, I think that was the deeper dimension of Bernie's speech as well. We're going to go on to the part where he disses Joe Biden when we have that. And Cornel West definitely knows how to show a lot of love, and he also definitely knows how to show a lot of shade.
Throw some shade, yeah.
Oh, he's a master shade thrower.
On one hand, you got Brother Biden. Now, we know Brother Biden's a decent brother in a lot of ways, but he's a backward-looking, dying-the-war neoliberal with limited vision and even less courage.
That's what I'm
so
saying.
He's got to check and see what the polls say.
And he and
That's so good. Can we do this? So good.
It's so good.
Alyona was doing the hands. You were doing the hands. She was doing the Cornel West hands. Then we have Bernie.
That is
Wait, oh, you got
unacceptable. So that on the one hand, you got Brother Biden. Now, we know Brother Biden's a decent brother in a lot of ways.
Here we
but
go.
He's a
That's when he always
backward-looking,
starts.
dying-the-war neoliberal with limited vision and even less courage. So he's got to check and see what the polls say.
And he.
So good.
You know what I love? I love that he has two modes. So when he says something like, Bernie Sanders is my, vanilla brother, you go, okay, well, here's the soliloquy coming. And then what's awesome is that when he says, Joe Biden's is a good man, then it's like, the soliloquy's coming. Like it's the same starting point for total exaltation or complete shade. Here he is on Bernie and how he taps into who people really are.
Border, precious Muslims, and so forth and so on. But what Brother Bernie will do is say, look, I know that even though you may have tendencies to support Brother Trump, in fact, I speak not just to your interests, but your sense of who you are. And that's what neoliberal elites were unable to do. Neoliberal elites were still tied to Wall Street, military-industrial complex, and acting as if they're looking down on working people, that liberal arrogance, that liberal self-righteousness that needs to be called into question.
But,
he's so right about that. I mean, he caught every single dynamic of how these races work, according to me, in that line. And that's the deeper version, because Joe Biden's running around with this like, this isn't who we are.
Yeah.
Well, who are we, Joe? I don't know what the fuck you're talking about. But that deeper, you could be better than this and also serve your own interests, because there's people who have absolutely no respect for you that are playing to your worst. That's a powerful message. And yes, free of all the liberal disrespect.
Yeah, and he's like who you really are, right? Versus the kind of way that you're being portrayed and being pandered to by this bigot Trump. Who are you as a real person? What do you want? And that's where Bernie Sanders is so good. Is he says, you want to live in a society where people are taken care of. You want to live in a society where if you work, you're taken care of, that people aren't being screwed over by this horrible system. And that speaks to so many fucking people. And, it's just, I don't know. Cornel West is an amazing speaker. He really speaks to, he can talk to any audience and really move you.
Absolutely. Did you ever interview him? Have you ever interviewed him?
I don't think so.
I feel like you would have.
I know that sounds weird, but I constantly forget people who I've interviewed because there have been so many. I didn't make it sound like that, but the truth is, I forget. I don't think so.
All right, few Discord questions, and then we're out of here. Will Michael's Rogan ep be the best episode of Rogan ever? Yeah, of course. Naturally. Are you kidding me? Serious question: is Old Town Road a good song? I haven't listened to it.
It's a great song.
I've enjoyed it.
Is it a good song?
It's a great song.
It's a lot of fun.
And there's a great video of what's the artist's name?
Billy Ray Cyrus?
Oh no, I'm talking about the new. There must be a new Old Town Road.
It's the
remake.
What's his name?
Not Nasty Nas, but
I'll look it up. But anyway,
something
Lil
like
Nas
that.
X, yeah,
yeah, Lil Nas X.
There's this
definitely
I'm trying to learn all my Lils. There's so many of them.
He does a great performance.
Are you talking about the little kids?
I'm trying to learn my Lils.
I will say, as somebody who does country western fashion,
hilarious.
I love Lil Nas's look. In all of his videos, they've been really phenomenal. His boots are incredible.
I've seen his
jackets.
pictures. He's got a good look. I haven't listened
Good
to
cowboy
him
hat. I love it.
He's got a good look. Do you think Warren can be pressured into a better foreign policy? I mean, I think people can generally be pressured, but I think that Warren does not have the understanding or the inclination. I think she wants to do some good things on domestic policy. I think she has nothing in that realm, and her defaults on military budgets, on Israel policy, are really bad signals.
I think this.
This is so deep. It's a deep state.
Wasn't there a story about how the Yang campaign was trying to get a third projector so he can campaign in more than one place at once? I thought that his point. I thought that the point of his campaign was to basically get him one without using his money. I buy that. Let's see. I'll get to this mayoral thing in Barcelona another time. Wow. Okay. I will, and also the questions on Germany, Barcelona, and Canada we'll get to next week because those are like very involved questions. Okay, but this will be the final question of the night. Your pick for Trump's new press secretary. I think we'll go around the room for this, starting with Alyona.
I don't start with me on something like
starting
that.
with Matt Leck.
We also have some topical news. Catherine Gorka expected to be named Customs and Border Protection Press Secretary.
Oh, my fucking
And just a note on Catherine Gorka, of course, married to Sebastian Gorka. Sebastian Gorka, whose mother was a translator for David Irving, the Holocaust denier.
I think it's time to go back on another meditation retreat. Okay, I know my pick. I have already put down on record that I think he's going to speak at the 2020 RNC. I see him building a new profile for himself, and I think even this incredibly racist administration still wants some plausible deniability. I could see being charged for cutting your wife's head off as being a form of deplatforming. I think O.J. Simpson will be the Trump administration's new press secretary. That's my pick. Anybody else?
I think it's time to return to a better time. As Trump says, make America great again. And there was a time when America was great. And that was when the Mooch was the press secretary. And I say, bring back the Mooch.
Actually, seriously, dude. I am so ready to have him come back.
I think this is an intellectual curiosity expedition.
Oh, my God. All right. I want to thank everybody. I want to thank all patrons. Alyona, you're going to be back again in several weeks to do this again.
Wait, you didn't? Oh.
Wait, what? Oh, Michael Hastings. Go for
You
it.
already started playing the outro
No, it's
music.
fine. No. No, it's important. Go ahead.
Yeah,
6 years
I
after
just wanted
Michael.
to say a few words because today is six
Yeah, please.
words since Michael Hastings died. And, I think that he was a very dear friend of mine. And
This is
aside
messed
from
up,
just,
but honestly, tell people, not everybody's going to remember who he was. Give a brief.
he was an incredible reporter and author. He, I think, most famously, probably for most people, the way that they would recognize his work was for taking down General Stanley McChrystal for his article that he wrote in Rolling Stone. Later wrote a book about it, which then, Netflix and Brad Pitt put out that movie that was kind of a satire or a black comedy about foreign policy, but he also did a lot of other really important reporting. He also covered the last election with Obama, and he was somebody who didn't shy away or scare away at all from holding people accountable, especially when it came to our foreign policy and what it meant and the impact and damage that it had on people. And he, took no prisoners, wasn't scared, could sometimes be a little abrasive. And I think that that's what was so amazing about him, though, and really so rare about what he did. And so I think of him often, just as a human being and kind of the void that he's left in my life and in others' lives. But especially I think of his voice and how much it's missing today and how much it could add to what's happening politically in the world.
If people could look up an article in the archives to get started, what should they read? Can they? Because they could find even that Rolling Stone article pretty easily.
Yeah,
right?
I think Rolling Stone, actually, I saw they tweeted out today something, in honor of Michael, and I think it was a whole list of different articles that he wrote. And there was, of course, obviously the General Stanley McChrystal article, but he wrote a piece about Bo Bergdahl, which was really
it's a great
a
piece,
fascinating
That's
and
such
beautiful,
a good piece. I remember
such a
that.
human look at it. And I think that was, part of his talent too, was not just being this kind of like gritty, tough war reporter, but also seeing the human side of it and how flawed we all were. And, because he was too, Michael was somebody who was embedded multiple times abroad. His first book was about his fiance who was killed in Iraq in a bombing. And so he's somebody who suffered a lot, was certainly damaged by the experiences that he had, and I think angry because of them, but it also just made him that much more passionate and prolific.
Awesome. So please look him up. He really was. Yeah. It sucks.
Yeah.
He
What was
he
it? Do we
an
know what the
incredible writer.
McChrystal book was called? I can look it up too.
I think it was called The Operators.
Oh yeah, that's right.
But the article was called Runaway General. The Rolling Stone article.
And people attacked him at the time for not voluntarily like softening the story.
Of course, people
I mean, it
like
was
David Brooks.
like David Brooks, and I forget her name, but I think she was like a reporter for CBS or something. There was a
well,
lot.
he called. I thought you were talking about Barbara Starr, who was.
Barbara Starr is
she's the
promoting war with
Pentagon.
Iran as we speak.
He called her the Pentagon spokesperson.
She is. She indeed is.
Which was so good.
Look at her tweets on Iran. Her articles are
Yeah.
ridiculous. Alyona, this is awesome.
Thank you. This was so much fun.
No, seriously.
I
So
love
you'll
doing
come
this.
back in again soon for another round.
Skype
Everybody
in from my goat farm.
Skype in from the goat farm. I want to build a studio at the goat farm. Thanks, everybody. We appreciate you. We'll see you with new content Sunday.